With the start of the new year comes the Lunar New Year, a holiday for families. On this day, families come together, cook delicious food, and have a good time. But 32-year-old Jiahan isn't happy. She is an out-of-work freelancer, but most would say that she is unemployed, as she is cooking for the guests who have yet to arrive. Her mother is watching a cute video of her grandson, but Jia is irritated that they are getting in her way and eating the food she cooked before everyone arrives. When she suggests that her parents should cook the food since they are eating it, Jia's mother reminds her that cooking is the least she could do since she lives at home and doesn't even pay rent. Jia's sister, Jimin, arrives with her family and her mother embraces her granddaughter. Jimin's husband is carrying the grandson and Jimin is exhausted from the trip and wants to sit down. Jia appears out of the shadows to greet her little sister. With an almost fake smile, Jia says she is happy to see her and hands her a flower print apron. Jimin responds by noting that the apron looks great on Jia and mocks her relationship status by saying all she needs to do now is walk down the aisle. But Jia doesn't find the joke funny. She insists Jimin puts on the apron to help her cook with a lifeless expression. Jia's mom is not impressed and hits her. Jia just wants someone else to cook. But Jimin's husband points out that Jimin is tired enough as is, suggesting she is pregnant with a third child. This is big news for the family and they start eating. Soon after, Jia is outside smoking and angry at her sister for her life and suggesting she meet with a guy she knows. Jia's sulking is interrupted by an unknown man who comments on Jia still having a foul mouth. This man is eating chicken breast in a smoking area, which confuses Jia. The man reveals that his name is Mincheol Jin and that he used to live next door and wear headphones a lot. Jia initially doesn't remember him, but then realizes that he used to be a scrawny gamer kid. Mincheol didn't think he changed that much though, but Jia insists that he changed a lot and notes that him eating chicken breast in a smoking area is strange. Mincheol explains he is here because his family wasn't happy with him not eating the Lunar New Year food because they had too many calories. Jia recalls that Mincheol is 32 years old, just like her. They used to live in the same building and were childhood friends, but not by choice. Mincheol was the shy kid that didn't get along with anyone in class. But Jia doesn't see the point in reminiscing and is wondering how Mincheol changed so much. She concludes that the city life changed him and he is now an assistant manager programmer at a well-known company and seems to live a decent life. Jia compares Mincheol to her life, where she constantly gets scolded at home and is unemployed, and is shocked that Mincheol is doing better than her. She starts to sulk again, but Mincheol interrupts her and asks how she is doing. Jia deflects the question and Mincheol says that he's just been living and while he thinks he's doing great, his parents think otherwise. His parents have been nagging him to get married and even signed up for a dating service with a registration fee of $5,000. Mincheol assumes Jia isn't in the same situation, but she is. Then, Jia suggests that they get married. Mincheol is shocked and Jia explains that since their parents are nagging them to get married, they should just get married to fix the problem. It would be a win-win scenario. To Jia's surprise, Mincheol asks Jia's dad for his blessing and they get married. They go to a tropical location for their honeymoon, and while she is drinking on the first night of her honeymoon, she finally realizes what just happened. She is shocked that she's not in a dream and is in another country married to Mincheol. Jia and Mincheol are now getting ready for bed and Mincheol is searching through his suitcase for something that would make their first night together good. Jia assumes that he is talking about something dirty and gets embarrassed, saying she is not ready. To her surprise, Mincheol hands her earplugs. He says that sometimes he snores and then goes to sleep. When Mincheol starts snoring, Jia uses the earplugs and goes to sleep, noting that Mincheol is very practical and prepared. The next day, Jia is concerned that her happy honeymoon can be disastrous if they start fighting. As Jia is carefully choosing her clothes, Mincheol appears in unfashionable but comfortable clothing and asks how much longer Jia is going to take. He is even wearing socks with sandals. Mincheol asks if it matters and Jia says it does because she will be looking. Since their schedule isn't tight, they go clothes shopping. While Jia doesn't know much about fashion, she thought anything else would be better. She was wrong. Mincheol comes out in a red and blue outfit with suspenders. His justification is that the colors are bright so he won't get hit by a car. Jia gives him a shirt and pants to try and she says they look nice to her. Mincheol proceeds to ask the clerk for 7 sets of the outfit. Jia is outraged but Mincheol says that since it looks good, he should have several of them. Jia decides to pick out a few new outfits so he can rotate between them. While she is looking, Mincheol notices the swimsuits. This prompts him to ask Jia if he can pick out a swimsuit for her for their banana boat ride. Jia agrees without thinking but is embarrassed when she realizes what he asked. Jia and Mincheol finished shopping and are heading toward the shore. But Jia is still embarrassed that Mincheol picked out her swimsuit. She is obligated to wear it at their next activity and doesn't even know what kind of swimsuit he bought. Jia thinks he bought a sexy one, but that was not the case. Mincheol bought her a wetsuit to match his. To Mincheol, this was the best choice because they are comfortable and insulated. But to Jia, his choice is embarrassing because this is their honeymoon and everyone else is in bikinis and swim shorts. She was concerned that it would be too hot. To her surprise, the wetsuit was very comfortable. The two had a wonderful time on the banana boat, eating and taking pictures. Toward the end of the day, Jia and Mincheol were walking on the beach. Jia wants to do as much as possible because the trip was expensive. But Mincheol is concerned that Jia is tired and points out an injury on her heel. Jia was too caught up in the fun to notice it. Mincheol offers to give Jia a piggyback ride because walking on an injured heel must hurt. Jia is hesitant because of the schedule, but she eventually hops on Mincheol's back. Jia is embarrassed and asks if she is heavy. Mincheol points out how her weight makes it a good workout and Jia is offended by this. As they are going, Jia feels comfort from Mincheol's back. Jia notices how beautiful the sunset is and insists they take a picture. Mincheol doesn't want to, but Jia says that they should live in the moment. Back at the hotel, Jia is looking at the picture and remembers her sister saying that couples normally fight on their honeymoon. But Jia and Mincheol didn't fight and they had a lot of fun. But Jia is still embarrassed about being on Mincheol's broad warm back. This feeling quickly goes away as she sees Mincheol sleeping. She is satisfied with the trip. Back in Korea, Jia's mom made a lot of food and packed boxes to celebrate her coming back and so she can move in with Mincheol. Jia is apprehensive but remembers that she agreed to this when she got married. After the move, Mincheol presents Jia with a paper. Jia remembers something random about a cartoon theme song. The lyrics were "Just do it, just do it. It's okay to make mistakes because you aren't an adult yet." Jia is just realizing now that this means that you're screwed if you make mistakes as an adult. The point is that since Jia said they should get married, her life has spiraled out of control and now she is living with Mincheol. Back the paper. The paper is a contract for living together. Jia is shocked and throws it on the floor. She accepts that they need a contract and they each write 3 conditions. Mincheol's rules are no smoking, don't bother Mouse, and say something if something is wrong. Jia's rules are don't enter a room without knocking, don't force anything, and communicate if something is wrong. Jia is outraged about the no smoking rule. Not even her dad could get her to stop. But Mincheol doesn't like the smell so he says to smoke in moderation. Jia asks who Mouse is. Mouse is Mincheol's cat who is currently at Jia's feet. The cat is named Mouse because cats like mice. Jia eventually says she likes cats, but asks what would happen if she didn't. Mincheol says that he would just get another room for Jia to live in. Money wouldn't be a problem because Mincheol is serious about marriage. They agree on the rest of the terms and form an official contract. Mincheol adds one more thing. Any party can terminate the contract marriage at any time. Jia foreshadows that the contract will bring them many tears and laughs. On the first night living together, Jia decides to not unpack yet and order some furniture. Mincheol goes back to work tomorrow and Jia is anxious about living with someone other than her family. Mincheol, on the other hand, is not worried and is gaming. The next day, Jia is woken to the sound of Mincheol cooking breakfast. Jia is impressed and decides to eat since she's up. But this feeling quickly went away as Mincheol put the ingredients into a blender to make a chicken breast smoothie. Jia thinks it tastes terrible and asks if they are having anything else. Mincheol says yes and hands her a protein bar. Jia is mad and complains that this isn't real food and comments how Mincheol is going to eat a delicious lunch at work by himself. Mincheol disproves this by revealing his healthy lunch. Jia looks in the fridge for something to eat and it's filled with healthy food. Jia has a newfound gratitude toward her mom's cooking. Seeing Jia like this, Mincheol suggests Jia go out and get breakfast by herself. Jia asks if that's okay and Mincheol says that all he needs is his smoothie. Jia has been in the habit of eating with her family, but remembers this is a contract marriage. Mincheol leaves and Jia says she's going to get a job soon and that she'll see him at dinner. The moment Mincheol leaves, Jia takes back her words and proudly says she's going to stay unemployed until her bank is empty. Mincheol is walking to work and gets into the car of his colleague, Sang Yu Choi. He is surprised that Mincheol suddenly asked him to hand in his request to take 10 days of vacation. Sang Yu notices that Mincheol is smiling, which he rarely does, and asks if something good happened. Mincheol remembers Jia saying goodbye to him, and he responds by saying it's nice knowing someone is waiting for you at home. Sang Yu is confused, but Mincheol clarifies that his wife is at home. Sang Yu is shocked. He thinks Mincheol is messing with him until Mincheol confirms he got married last week. When they get to work, everyone is congratulating Mincheol, and he hands them souvenirs from his honeymoon. But before Sang Yu can get to work, manager Suyeon So pulls him aside and is angry that Mincheol got married, suggesting she liked him. Sang Yu responds by saying that it was unexpected because Mincheol didn't seem interested in girls. 33-year-old Suyeon's past is now summarized. She was seen as a child genius and just wanted a moderately okay guy. As she climbed to success, she remained single. She is annoyed that she can't find a decent guy. Then she realizes that this decent guy she wanted was Mincheol. But her dreams of marrying Mincheol are now shattered. All she can do now is consult with the Sangyu who went to university with her and is the quote-unquote company Cupid. After work, Sangyu and Suyeon follow Mincheol home to check if he's really married. Then, they see Mincheol talking to a girl on the street just to see an angry Jia smoking. Jia is angry because Mincheol didn't call her when he was coming home late because she waited for him to eat dinner. Sangyu and Suyeon are skeptical that Jia is the type of girl Mincheol is interested in. Mincheol assumes Jia didn't want to eat with him because of what happened at breakfast, but Jia insists the problem is that he didn't call her. Mincheol asks if he is allowed to call her because Jia didn't like him calling her in 5th grade when he called to play. Jia said that she had to use the house phone, but is interrupted when he sees two people looking at them around the corner. Sangyu and Suyeon hide and Mincheol confirms that he is allowed to call Jia. Mincheol had another chicken breast smoothie for dinner. Jia recalls her past with Mincheol and remembers that she stopped hanging out with him around 5th grade. They were close when they were younger, but stopped because she was teased for hanging around a boy. Jia continued to ignore Mincheol throughout middle school. Jia now feels bad about being angry at Mincheol. Before she can apologize, Mincheol sends Jia her favorite food, which is spicy chicken feet. Then, Jia barges into Mincheol's room. Instantly, Mincheol points out how she broke the rule, but Jia says that since there's a problem, they need to talk it out to fix it. Jia and Mincheol sit down to talk. Jia starts by complaining how Mincheol didn't get her beer to accompany her chicken feet. Jia gets to the point and says they haven't had a real conversation before, so she thought it would be good to talk and eat. Jia offers a beer to Mincheol, which he instantly rejects. Jia is concerned, but Mincheol just doesn't want to lose his gains. Instead of beer, Mincheol gets water and he asks what Jia wanted to talk about. Jia didn't have anything planned and is just going to make it up. 2 hours later, Jia is drunk and talking about Mincheol and her playing games in the past. Then, Jia fell asleep. Mincheol abruptly wakes her up with an alarm and tells her to go to her room and sleep and that he'll clean up. Jia notes that she is drunk because she drank the alcohol she bought for 2 people. In her drunken state, Jia asks Mincheol if she can see his ear. When Mincheol approaches, Jia takes his glasses and points out how his eyesight is bad. Mincheol wants them back and pushes Jia against the wall. She is having fun until she realizes that Mincheol is very attractive without his glasses, and they are very close together, so she gets embarrassed. Jia gives the glasses back and flees to her room. She is very embarrassed and doesn't know what to do. The next day, Jia stares at Mincheol as he leaves for work. She wants to apologize about last night, so things can go back to normal. When she attempts to say sorry, she gets nervous and says I meow because the cat said meow. Mincheol is confused. At work, Mincheol asks Sungyu about Jia's meowing. Sungyu thinks he is bragging, but Mincheol is genuinely confused. Sungyu suggests that Jia was trying to be cute, but Mincheol says they aren't close enough to joke around together. Sungyu, who supposedly has a doctorate in loviology, has a simple solution. He says that Mincheol needs sympathy, so, when he gets home, Mincheol meows at Jia. Jia falls to the floor in embarrassment. Mincheol states that Sungyu said this would help, but Jia is mad that he told other people about it. To avoid situations like this, they added a clause in their contract to keep what happens between them a secret. A few days after, Suyeon suggests that Mincheol host a housewarming party. When Mincheol tells Jia this, she is initially hesitant, but she eventually agrees to do it. Mincheol asks why, but Jia insists. Housewarming parties are parties held after getting a new house or getting married. It is a party to ask for people's continued support in the future. It's not required, but it's something that only happens once or twice in your lifetime. You'd normally want to avoid it because it's a lot of work, but Jia wants to because Mincheol hates the idea. This is revenge for making her embarrassed yesterday. The next day, after protesting with Jia about how they don't need to have a party, he leaves for work with a smile. Jia has noticed a few key traits about Mincheol. Number 1. Mincheol is all about efficiency, almost like an eco-friendly robot. Number 2. Mincheol is weak to requests and will comply if you push enough. Based on these traits, Jia thinks Mincheol was going to tell the office that his wife didn't want to have a housewarming party. Jia gets embarrassed by what Mincheol refers to her at work. Jia starts preparations and starts to regret it. She doesn't know how to cook well and calls her mother for help. Soon, everyone arrives and Jia whispers to Mincheol that he should be nice to her. Everyone is amazed at the array of food Jia cooked. Mincheol clearly doesn't want to be there and even starts drinking. Sung-yu asks Suyin if she is satisfied in knowing Mincheol is actually married, but she isn't and has something prepared to test them. Sung-yu starts by saying they'd like to use this time to get to know Mincheol better. Everyone wrote down something they wanted to know about him. The first request is Suyin's. It is for them to kiss. Jia wants to hear the first request, but Sung-yu is apprehensive and skips to the next question. Jia says that to prevent a headache, they should just pretend to be a happy couple. The next question is when, where, and how did he propose? If they can't answer, they have to drink a whole glass of beer. Jia can't think of a good fake response, but Mincheol says that Jia proposed in a smoking area while he was eating chicken breast. While this is true, Jia decides to not say anything and drink. The next question is when and where was their first kiss? The problem is, they haven't kissed and even fake kissed at their wedding. Jia decides to drink, but to her surprise, Mincheol says they kissed at 5 years old in kindergarten. Jia doesn't remember, but Mincheol reminds her that her nickname in kindergarten was the smooching ghost because she went around kissing everyone. Jia is mad that Mincheol would bring this up. The party soon ended and everyone went home, but Sung-yu and Suyin agree that their actions seem fake. When Sung-yu asks if they should look deeper, Suyin says no. Sung-yu is shocked and almost gets into an accident. Suyin says that it's okay because she didn't think she could force her way into their relationship. Sung-yu is surprised and decides they should go drink at a fancy barbecue place. Suddenly, they ended up waking up in the same bed together naked. Will this be the start of a romantic relationship? Back in Jia and Mincheol's apartment, Jia explains why talking about them kissing in kindergarten and proposing in a smoking area is embarrassing. Jia thinks this is common sense, but remembers that he's dealing with Mincheol. Jia says they should pick another time for their first kiss. Before they can decide, Jia gets a call from her mom. Her mom called to say Spaghetti Man Loses His Way came out today. Spaghetti Man is a work that started Hero Movies. Jia asks if her mom watched the movie as soon as it came out and says yes. Immediately after, Jia's mom tries to spoil the movie, but Jia ends the call before she gets the chance. Jia's family has a punishment system where if you don't watch a movie the day it comes out, someone who watches it will spoil it for everyone. The competition is fierce for big movies like Spaghetti Man, so Jia decides Mincheol and her need to watch it right now. Jia is enjoying herself with her popcorn, but Mincheol looks nervous. He says that this feels like a date. Jia is shocked. The movie was very good and they got embarrassed while trying to eat popcorn at the same time. Jia wonders what Mincheol thinks of the movie. Little does she know, Mincheol has been following the Spaghetti Man series for 20-some years. On their way out, Jia is talking about the movie with Mincheol and realizes that this feels like a date. Then, Jia gets pushed from behind and Mincheol catches her in his arms. Due to the sudden nature of the catch, they ended up accidentally kissing. Mincheol puts her down. Jia says that it didn't count because of the 3-second rule and then runs away in embarrassment. Mincheol found Jia in the smoking area and made her air out her clothes. Mincheol then confirms the kiss didn't count because of the 3-second rule. They then decide to go to lunch and Jia can't get the image of the kiss out of her head. Jia feels like she's overreacting, but Mincheol says he needs to get something off his chest and reveals the kiss was actually 5 seconds. Mincheol suggests they make this first kiss, but Jia is mad and runs away because she couldn't look at Mincheol. Jia decided to move in with her sister. Jimin and Jinu are not impressed. Then, the 13,261st Jia Summit started. This included Jia from 6 different ages. She explains the situation and thinks that what Mincheol said was rude. Jia didn't want to go back to her parents' place, so she is at Jimin's place now. 15-year-old Jia asks if she can stay at a friend's place, but that is not possible. Jia's plan works because Jimin owes her for bringing them together, giving them money for dates, and convincing them to get married. However, Jaemin is not happy, despite the gift. Jia and Jaemin start talking. They note how Jimin's children take after Jia, and when she tries to spoil the Spaghetti Man movie, Jia reveals she already watched it. Jaemin asks what happened with Mincheol and guesses that Jia ran away after fighting with Mincheol. Jia confirms this. Jaemin then agrees to let Jia stay there to babysit the kids so they can go out. Jia isn't happy about this, but she doesn't have a choice. After 2 hours, Jia realizes how hard it is to be a parent. The doorbell rings, and thinking that it's a delivery, she opens the door to find Mincheol standing there. Jia slams the door shut and is wondering what he is doing there. One of the children says that if someone who looks like Mincheol comes, he should be let in because he is food. Jia has been set up. While the kids are eating ice cream, Jia and Mincheol get to talking. Mincheol reveals that Jaemin told him that she was here. Jia protests, but Mincheol reminds her how the contract said they need to talk it out. Mincheol asks why she is mad. After pondering the question while feeding the kids ice cream, which Mincheol refuses to eat, she remembers it's not a big deal since they're both adults. After Jaemin and Jinu got back, they left together for the apartment. On their way back, Mincheol apologizes and says he should have thought about it and said sorry earlier. Jia says that Mincheol is only saying that because that is what Jia wants to hear. She continues by saying Mincheol should be punished with a forehead flick. Mincheol doesn't want one due to past forehead flicking trauma. Before the flick, Jia says she's mad because she doesn't want her first kiss to be an accident. Jia decides to kiss Mincheol on the forehead and says that this is their first kiss. At work, Mincheol is discussing with Sungyu how Jia is mad that people think their first kiss was in kindergarten. Mincheol is worried about how to correct this, but Sungyu shouts that this isn't anything to worry about and explains how he has been very tired ever since the party. Mincheol says that they all left laughing and smiling, so he shouldn't be tired. Sungyu avoids the topic and Suyeon appears. Sungyu and Suyeon are so embarrassed they can't even look at each other. Suyeon flees when Mincheol waves. Sungyu introduces himself again. He is very talkative and claims to have a doctorate in loviology, but it's all a lie. He is really an introvert who likes staying at home. But, since he has 3 sisters, he hears a lot of conversations. This made him an expert in reading clues from women. This skill was exhibited at a young age. He quickly became the god of dating because he matches so many together, but he never had a girlfriend before. After his entanglement in the sheets with Suyeon, he was lost because Suyeon apologized after. Sungyu first met Suyeon in college, where he was a freshman and she was a senior. Suyeon was very demanding, but now she is just another adult. So, they decided to forget what happened that night. Now, Sungyu and Suyeon are now awkward every time they meet, indicating they aren't actually adults yet. Suddenly, in the elevator, Sungyu breaks the silence by calling out to Suyeon. But, Sungyu could not get himself to talk about anything and was interrupted by a delivery man. As the day passed, Sungyu was still caught up thinking about Suyeon. Mincheol notices this and asks him what's wrong while handing him a red ginseng stick. Sungyu says nothing's wrong, but then comes to a profound realization. Mincheol is married and could help solve his problem. Sangyu asks for advice on how to break the awkwardness after a fight. Mincheol recalls how he isn't supposed to talk about the marriage, but also remembers how he can be flexible at times. Mincheol decides to be flexible and says that their last fight was resolved by Jia kissing him. This is not what Sungyu wanted to hear.